I'm the man on the mic.
And I'm the guy on the bike.
And this is a Velo29 podcast.
Morning,
Good
Joe.
morning, Rich. How are we doing?
Oh, not bad, not bad.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're engaging our brains and our bicycles for the numbers episode. Tell me more.
I think we want. This is topical for me because I've really got into my Zwift and indoor training and FTP and that kind of thing recently, and it got me thinking.
Go on.
Functional threshold power for those who.
Oh, FTP. I thought it was something to do with the Financial Times. So thank you very much indeed.
We don't go down that route here.
Yeah, let's not.
No, but no, it got me thinking a lot, and it's a very useful thing to have these days, that you can buy an item which sits in your house, and whenever you want, you can jump on it and get this number that is meant to be an indication of how good at cycling you are, and you can work on that, you can progress, and you can look on YouTube or whatever, and you can research and you can compare yourself with all these different levels of cycling, and you can then conclude how good you are as a cyclist. And I think that whilst that's a wonderful thing, is it a useful thing for the broader community? So I thought a bit of conversation around that today would be great.
Okay, well, we'll do that. We'll have a chat about that later on, and what that means, and how that works. But I guess we need to talk about us to start with. How are you doing, mate? I mean, how is life in this crazy world that we're in right now?
It's if you ask me 1 minute, I say it's all right. We're safe. We carry on. I can ride my bike indoors, and I'm spending more time with the family. On the other, if you ask me a minute later, I may well say I'm concerned about how long this is all going to last, and what comes after it, and that kind of thing. So it's like we keep saying, it's an up and down. And what about you?
Talking about having more time with the family, I've noticed you're on dad duties at the same time as doing the podcast.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's a little ginger head here, our special guest for the day. So the wife's not available today, so I've got full-time duties, which is totally fine. I'm just hoping that he.
So if you hear Daddy, my device is not working, or help, I need a poo, then we know where that's coming from, and it isn't me for once.
Yeah, for once.
Oh, bless you, mate.
Things all right with you?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got little ones to contend with at the same time, so I think that makes life a little bit easier. But yeah, for me, it's just trying to eke out a living, really. In a very strange time, but it's all good. Again, like you say, one day you go, right, I'm going to make the most of it, and the next day you go, I don't think I can do this. So it's just a bit like that, really. I've got my hours in the cafe and my odd little online stuff and my quizzes and my book, and just kind of plodding on. Yeah,
at least you got stuff going on. There'll be plenty who have nothing, won't there?
Exactly. And I thank my lucky stars. I make the most of what I've got, and that's all you can do, I think.
I notice a lot of in my Zwifting, follow a lot of people who ride with us, and I noticed that quite a few have sort of fallen off the wall since Christmas, New Year. I think there was an enthusiasm around Christmas, and people were getting fitter, and then the sort of that period of distraction. There seem to have, a lot of people have lost the mojo a little bit and haven't got back into January like they normally would do, which is a shame, because hopefully we will be doing events soon. And
it also doesn't surprise me, though. There was a thing I saw on the internet about the kind of pyramid of survival or something it was. And it was about, how do we achieve our goals? While we've got this time in lockdown, can we achieve our goals? And it talked about the foundations. And if you haven't got the foundations, i.e., your head's in the right place, you're secure, you know what you're doing, you're not feeling too stressed, you're not going to build on that. Unless you've got those, you can't then start achieving fitness goals and weight loss goals and improving your mental health if the other stuff isn't there in the foundation. And I think that's where a lot of people are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so easy, isn't it? You miss a day, you miss another day, then getting back on's a bit harder. I completely understand it, but everybody find that thing that gets you on the bike,
Yeah.
or that gets you go for a
Out.
run, or
Yeah.
just get into something that makes you feel good.
Well, as you know, I'm not much of a cyclist, but I like my walking, you know, and I did a 10-day streak. Apparently, it wasn't anything illegal. You're all right. I kept my clothes on. Yeah, I've got this little app, and it tells me if I've achieved my goal every day. And I was doing 10,000 plus steps a day, over 5 miles a day. Did 10 days, absolutely smashed it, and then had a day of feeling a bit And the next day, the day after that, boy, was it hard to try and get out again. And you only need that one day of struggling, and then you almost like you've got to reset all over again. And that at the moment is a really difficult thing to do if your head's not there.
I always, when we talked about training, the body goes up, drops off, up, drops off, and that's psychological as well as physical. And and normally the up, when you drop off, you've got to have something that builds you up. And when everything's going well, it's easy. But when you will drop off, and when it's coincides with other challenges, that coming back up again, it probably goes up, drops off, stays flat. And normally the peaks are getting higher, but then the peaks start to get lower, and it's really hard. But
and it's like you say, it's how you handle it yourself as well. You know, if you kind of almost beat yourself up about it, because I mean, I was looking at this app and I'd done 13,000 steps right one day. The next day I did 193.
There's the
that was the pajama day, and then it's like, oh, you know, I failed, or I can't do it, I lost my streak and all that, and you've got to then get yourself going again, and that's just walking. So yeah, I totally get it.
It's a really fine line, isn't it, between being happy about something and being unhappy about it. And if you were to wind the clock back 2 years and say, guys, stay at home for a month. You can't ride outside, but ride on your indoor trainer as much as you want, or ride in your immediate area, whatever that means. Interpret it yourself. But if you were to say that to somebody, and stop your working commute, be at home, all of those things, you think, wow, brilliant! I've got a month for doing that. Fast forward to now and say you've got another month of doing that, and but it's that really fine line, isn't it? And you've got to keep pulling yourself to the happy side of it, which is really hard to do. And I know that's what people are struggling with.
And it's finding where that bar is, because it may be that bar's just lowered a bit, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? I was saying this to somebody the other day, that some of our bars are up here, and I'm quite, I'm like you. We want to achieve, don't we? We're those kind of driven guys. And sometimes you just got to go, do you know what? This bar's here, and this equals survival. This equals just getting through the day. This equals not shouting at my missus. This equals just getting out and about for an hour. And that's it. It's not here. It's not where we would be, but that's okay.
It is, yeah. Adjust yourself. It's easy to say. It's so difficult. And but yeah, I hope we inject a little bit of enthusiasm into somebody and get them on the train.
Well, we're still here. We're still here. We're still going. We're still doing the podcast after however long. Just a quick kind of update business-wise. I mean, obviously, I'm guessing Winter Series, all your events cancelled at the moment. You've probably got people going, when's the next one happening? I mean, where are you at there?
We've sorted out. There should have been Croft races. That isn't going to happen at all. Circuit not available. And the freedom to rides that go with those not available either. Sprint Sportive round 1, which should be Saturday, can't happen, of course. So we've been in touch with everybody about that. The next round of the Sprint Sportive, I think it's 2 weeks' time, not going to happen. So we'll be in touch to remind you, but you should all log in and cancel your entry for that. The last one, the Penrith one, we've left in the calendar because who knows? We could come out of this quickly and get back to tiers and sort of be able to do it. So, we'll leave it there.
Optimism.
We're realistic that it probably won't be able to happen. And in that case, we'll just have to cancel it. After that, we're at York Leeds York, and that's the beginning of March. Honestly, don't know if that can or cannot happen. are looking at alternative dates for that, because it's an important event. We love it. People love it. Possibility to move it to a different date. So maybe we won't move it, but we will arrange a date that is a plan B. And if we need to, we will move it. But we'll keep, there's no need to get in touch with us and ask. We will get in touch with you as soon as there's some news.
Great. That's brilliant. Okay,
just wanted to mention the Klondike Grand Prix as well.
Klondike?
So we love the Klondike.
April. Yeah.
Well, sadly not. No.
Okay.
Local. So it moved from charity sponsor, big local, to local council who were doing loads of enthusiasm and doing a great job about it. Sadly, they are not able to support any events in the first half of this year for obvious reasons. And then also budget, it's an expensive event, budget-wise, internal priorities, and it's not going to happen this year, unfortunately. So no Klondike again this year, which is a real shame, because we love that event.
Yeah, we do. It's brilliant. Right, well, let's talk FTP then, mate. Let's talk watts versus K, whatever it's called, kilograms
Watts
and all
per
that
kilogram
kind of
and
stuff.
all of that kind of
That's
thing.
it. Yeah, go on. Talk to me, because I am very naive when it comes to all this, but I know you've got a lot of listeners. You've got a lot of listeners that know what we're talking about. So, is it a numbers game? Do we have to make it a numbers game? Do we become too obsessed with the numbers? What do you think?
Well, I think that's the discipline, isn't it? To be able to have a number, to be able to apply it effectively, but not to become obsessed about it. And that's a real, I struggle with that. I can become obsessed about numbers, and it's I wouldn't say I ride better for it. And I know people who will, they never ride without staring at the power meter, and the whole thing about riding is looking at the power meter, and that detracts away from the pleasure of riding. That isn't why any of us got on a bike. None of us get on a bike to have a good FTP. We get on a bike for the pleasure of cycling, and so you should be so careful not to detract from that. But
it can easily remove the joy, can't it? It can easily kind of become, like you say, an obsession, and then you actually lose what it's all about in the first place.
And don't get me wrong, there is incredible pleasure in increasing your performance. It's like, if you compare it to weightlifting, you don't join a gym and think, I want to be to squat 120 kilograms. But when you get there, it's great, and you want to do 125. And so I completely understand that. But it's, cycling's, it's not the same as going to the gym, is it? And so you've got to maintain that balance.
Yeah.
But it is still useful. And I look back to my racing career, and I was always, numbers weren't, power meters were just starting to come in then. But I remember there was one person in Brittany had one in a laboratory, and a few members of the team were invited to go do an FTP, and it was only the French guys, and I think there was maybe 15 of us, and 3 of them went and they did this FTP test, and they came back with the numbers, and it was like, oh wow. But that's 2006, that was. And so, it's not that long ago, and I know like the top pros were training with power back then. And in fact, probably from late 90s onwards. But again, it was the real elite. If you went outside of the top riders in the peloton, or the pro peloton, they wouldn't be training with power. And it's sort of, I do wish when I raced that I could have, because you think a lot about, right, why do I not go faster? And it's not that you're going slowly, but you're always trying. You're a competitive cyclist, so you're always trying to improve your performance. And I really think that would have been a good tool for me to be able to apply myself better. So,
well, they say knowledge is power, don't they? And I guess that's the thing. It's not so much about being obsessed about the numbers, but having the knowledge, having the understanding of where you are at and where you could be. I guess that's the key, isn't it?
So yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, knowledge is power. But I know I could have jumped on the power meter. I could have done my test. I could have known my weight, how I was performing, where my heart rate was. And because now I'm training, all right, okay, I'm comfortable at 155 beats per minute. I want to get the power as high as possible while maintaining that. And you edge up to 156, and it's okay. I'm starting to get a little bit into the red, but my power's. You can get some really interesting insight. You go two beats a minute, and you get an extra 10 watts. You go the third beat, and you don't get any, and you can really understand the body to the, like it becomes more like a racing car, I think, where
yes,
you need that extra 10 horsepower to do 1 mile an hour more, and that kind of thing. It's dead insightful.
But a racing car is a good analogy as well, isn't it? Because just because you've got really fast car doesn't mean it's the best car.
Well, yeah. What does the best mean? The Formula One car, and I always say a racing cyclist is like a Formula One car. Delicate, can perform well for a determined, dead set period of time, but put it out of its comfort zone even slightly, and it'll fall apart. And I think that really is a racing cyclist. But yeah, you have a diesel truck, which numbers do not look wonderful, but it'll drag
goes on forever
50 tons around the world for 2 million miles. And I think for a sportive rider, there's a large element of that, where the numbers, because it's easy. I was watching all these YouTube videos, and there's some so impressive stuff. There's Alberto Contador was riding it. His FTP was 7, so he could ride, and he applied that beautifully when he won the Tour, albeit it was taken away from him later on. But when he won the Tour, his strategy, and he spent the year getting ready for it. He would ride to the last 20 minutes of the climb, and then he would just disappear. And he could ride at FTP of 7, which is unbelievable. I can probably do half of that. Right. Mine's around half of that, maybe a little bit more now, but something like that. Today would have been more when I raced, but at 7 is just unbelievable, and he'd just disappear, and nobody could keep up with him. And it's easy to say, well, he's twice me. I'm rubbish.
I give up. Yeah.
But it's not at all the case. To go that much faster, he's not going twice as fast, because it's not. Right. It doesn't work like that. It's like, we all know you have a 100 brake horsepower car, it does 100 mile an hour. You have a 200 brake horsepower car, it doesn't do 200 miles an hour, it does 120. It's like, so cycling's the same as that. He's not going twice as fast. He would disappear off the road, make no mistake about it. But it doesn't mean I'm a rubbish cyclist. And our guys, our sportive riders who a little bit older, come into it a little bit later in their life, carrying a few more kilograms than Alberto Contador, I'm absolutely sure. The numbers are nowhere near impressive, but it doesn't mean you're not a really good cyclist.
Do you think that is a negative side of the kind of social media comparison thing that we can do now? Totally. Because you're comparing numbers, but you're not comparing body type, brain capacity, where you are in your life, whatever. You can't, can you? You can't compare.
You can't. No, there's no point in doing so. A sportive rider isn't training to ride the Tour de France or to win a mountain stage. He's training, he or she is training to get around a sportive, which is 100 miles or more, up and down mountains, inclement weather, having to take on food, on the bike for 10 hours, starting super early, driving to the event, driving home without having a shower. All of those things, getting up and going to work the next day, all of those things are applicable. And of course, one number doesn't give you that true comparison.
Yeah.
But never, there are some. I was watching Chris Froome the year he won his second Tour, and he's riding up Alpe d'Huez, for example, at 400 watts, and he was doing about 40 minutes to get up Alpe d'Huez, 45 minutes at 400 watts, and his heart rate was 150 to 155, and as soon as the watch drop a little bit, his heart rate comes right down. So he's not putting himself in the red. He's on his comfortable top of his threshold. Unbelievable. And then someone would attack, and he'd go to 700 watts, which is just like remarkable. And he'd hold that for 30 seconds, pull back the attack, but his heart rate would hardly move. It maybe go to 160. And then as soon as he'd caught the guy who was attacking, it would come back down to 155. He'd get comfortable at his 400 watts, and that would continue. And it's an unbelievable fitness. It's amazing insight.
And that's what the point that I've got from what you just said is it's knowing what you can do. That's the key. It's not trying to compare with someone else, but if your peak is somewhere lower, but you know that you're happy there and you're comfortable there and you can just sit there for ages, surely that's the key, isn't it? Is knowing where you're at.
It totally is, yeah. And I think we're doing the program now, which everybody knows about. It's brilliant. People love it. We're meeting all kinds of characters, learning all sorts of things. And I think that we'll do it again in years to come. And what, as I've learned more, I think we can, those epic performances where you compare yourself with Chris Froome is not relevant to a sportive rider. And unbeknowingly, that's the same kind of statement we've made with the program. We're trying to say that for a sportive rider, this is the kind of thing which is beneficial to do to get yourself to perform well in a sportive. Yeah. And perform well means either get around quicker, get further than you could before, or do the same thing but more comfortably. It doesn't mean scorch up a climb. And so I think we can bring FTP into that in future years. And what's an epic performance in a sportive? We can offer that up as a comparison, and I think that'll be really compelling for sportive riders, because to ride the Cheshire Cat in 5 hours is a huge achievement, or 6 hours is a huge achievement. And so to start to get some numbers associated with that, I think then is much more compelling and a much more relevant comparison for a sportive rider who sat on his turbo trainer in the winter, because he can look back and think, okay, this guy did an average of, 250, 260 watts for 6 hours. That's remarkable. That's what riding the Cheshire Cat equates to. He weighed 72 kilograms, I weigh 74. And start to pan that kind of thing out, I think, is a much more exciting and relevant comparison. So that's where we'd like to go with it.
So your conclusion is use it wisely, but don't become obsessed with the numbers, I guess.
Totally. It's a really interesting thing. It is massively beneficial. I wish it was around when I raced. I can train more effectively for it and still enjoy my cycling. And I think that's what everybody needs to use it for. And most do. But some people, it's just staring at the power meter, and it makes no difference if you're indoor or outdoor, which is a bit of a shame.
So it's not different to the start of our conversation at the beginning of the podcast. Everything in moderation, finding its balance and working it out together, whether it's life or cycling or anything else.
Yeah, we'll maybe rename this pod the life balance episode.
Mate, I've just thought of it. The life cycle.
Good idea.
Oh my word!
You've reminded us why we have you again.
That's a freedom to ride moment. The life cycle. That's what we're going to have to call this pod. And then it means we can talk about anything, really.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
The life cycle. I love that. Anyway, you've heard it all right here, guys, on the pod. The inspiration has come. So it's not all bad. Rich, mate, anything else you want to add?
No. I think on that high note, we should end.
We should before it goes down again. Hey mate, lovely to chat to you again, and keep safe and all that, and everybody else, keep well, keep safe, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, keep in touch, guys. Enjoy the pod, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Cheers everyone.
Bye.